Okay, welcome back. Alright, so last time we looked at all of our neutral cards, and now we're going to be getting into the faction cards. Again, beginning with the Champions of Redimere. Okay, so the Champions of Redimere, again, including the men elves and dwarves, but these are going to be the cards that are used by the faction itself. So these faction cards are going to be put into your deck regardless of which of those three groups you're using. It's going to vary from game to game depending on, what's going on. These would be split, and put into your deck. So I did tally up some totals. You'll see this throughout, just so we can compare the faction cards from the Champions to the faction cards of the Orcs. So you see here we have 22 combat, 15 cunning for a total of 37. So a total of 37 here at a cost of 85. And here we have a total of 58 at a cost of 121. So not exactly balanced. You have a lot more cost here relative to the total that the faction cards provide. And we'll see how that plays out as we go along. Whether or not that's balanced enough. If not, we can come in and change it. But they have 57 as opposed to 37, so or 58 as opposed to 37. So that kind of balances it. Even though they're getting more, they're paying more, and they're getting less and paying less. And so it just kind of makes the Orcs a more like intense, aggressive faction, but they're going to pay more for that. So I think that should balance out. We'll see how it goes. Again, these faction cards are only a small percentage of the cards that are in your deck. I mean, you also have neutral cards, and you also have your faction group cards, which are the bulk of the cards you have. So we'll see how that plays out. I think it'll be okay. So let's take a look. We don't have any events or anything like that. That's only for the neutral cards. We're going to have equipment and units like we did in the neutral cards, but we're also going to have tactics, because now we have a specific faction who might have its own way of going about things overall, be it men, elves, or dwarves. Alright, so we have the Forge of Prophecy. It's an equipment item, so it does not require a unit to attach it to. And it allows you to look at the top card of both faction decks, then place each into the active field or back on top of the deck. So you're going to look at both factions' top card. And then you can decide what to do with it. Do you want it to come out, or do you want it to remain? You may want it to remain to slow down the game. You may want it to come out. Let's say it's a unit. You may want it to come out on your turn so you can capture it if it's an opponent's unit. If you reveal a captain at the top of your faction deck, you may want to bring it into play immediately so its arrive effect comes into play, or you may want to wait. You may want to wait because you want that arrival effect to happen on, another turn. So this gives you some choice. It's the Forge of Prophecy. The Forge of Prophecy both reveals and contorts the future. So it reveals it, and then it also can be altered via this. Not only do you have this ability, but you also have +2 cunning via the Forge of Prophecy, because it's giving you information. It's allowing you to be more tactical, more strategic, more able to make decisions. So we gave you a little bump to the cunning. And it's a small handheld box ornately adorned with symbols of eyes and claws. The eyes, the ability to see something. The claws, the ability to do something. So that's the symbology there. With bone pegs fitting in rows of holes, with alternating rows of colored powders in troughs. So, I don't know, if you've ever been to like a Cracker Barrel and they have that little game on the table, where you put the pegs in the holes. That's kind of what I was thinking with this. It would be like a little box that you open up, like a jewelry box maybe, and inside there'd be pegs and holes in different arrangements, but then in between those pegs there would be rows of like different colored powders. So like, I'm just imagining, someone who knows how to use this thing would put in different powders, maybe different elements that would allow them to see different things, and then the arrangement of the pegs might determine the timing of what they see, or, just some mechanism by which to use this prophetic forge. So there's only 2 of those. They'll be coming up fairly rarely. And now we have, for the first time, an artifact. Okay, artifacts are something new that I've added to the game. On these equipments that there's only one of, we're calling them artifacts, and they're very specific to the faction, and they have a strong historical context, so they're notorious. Okay, if an opponent purchases this card, they're going to gain 1 influence. In addition, it's an artifact, so when an opponent purchases this card, it is captured instead of destroyed. Typically, all equipment, when purchased by the opponent, would be destroyed. Okay, you can't use the opponent's equipment. You can't use the opponent's artifact, but you do capture it as a trophy, and it has big VP. See? So when this comes out, it's going to be a point of focus for both parties. Now, the psychological effect of this is important to consider. The player is going to seek to defend this artifact. There's going to be a certain covetousness in regard to this. It's not just something that, well, I hope I can get it, and if not, it'll get destroyed. They're trying to take it, and you're trying to protect it. In addition, you're trying to get it. I mean, you want to use it. So the fact that it's available to the opponent to take and have for the victory points, and it's a significant amount of victory points, is going to make the player treat this artifact in a thematically appropriate way, you see? And so we're able to kind of generate that psychological state that would appear on the battlefield if this Mantle of Majesty somehow got out there and was in jeopardy, was vulnerable to the opponent. We're able to generate that in the player during the game by just adding in this little extra trait. Okay, so it's 9 cunning to take the Mantle of Majesty. It's 9 combat or cunning. So now, you see how this plays into that psychological state? It's actually more available, in a sense, because you have to get it and take care of it, right? The opponent can come and fight it out of your hands, or they can sneak into your camp and steal it. So combat or cunning, all right? You can't fight to get this, right? But they can fight their way to it. And so by making it kind of more accessible, in a sense, that's going to really heighten the sense of fear surrounding this thing, the sense of concern over its well-being. You may only attach this card to a captain. The attached captain gains +3 defense. This relic of antiquity was originally worn by Nethan of Croy, a legendary champion of the Monolith Accord, who subsequently became the first and only sovereign ruler of men in Redimere. Okay, so you remember this. We spoke about all of this, but it was previous to us having this artifact status. And so this is attached to a captain. It's the Mantle of Majesty. It's not going to be put on a basic unit. It's going to be put on one of the more important people in the faction. But again, this is going to be part of any of the factions, any of the faction groups, be it dwarves, elves, or men, because it's a very important artifact in the land of Canton Fields overall. Okay, and it's a shoulder armor with a necklace attached and a short fur cape, just for visual purposes. Alright, now another attachment is a weapon attachment, the Power Gauntlet. You can see there's 4 of them, quite a few. As equipment goes, we did a 4, 3, 2, 1, so this is the most you're going to see is 4 on the equipments. We had the 1 already in the Mantle of Majesty. This one, the attached unit gains +2 comm and may have 1 other equipment attached. So it's a Power Gauntlet. You're putting it on one hand. You still have the other hand available. Alright, so, and there's 4 of these, so theoretically you could wind up with 2 of these and a guy could put on 2 Power Gauntlets. Developed at Dawn's Crest, this gauntlet releases a painful burst of energy upon impact. Now, when we were going through things last time, we spoke about dwarves being a faction group that devised a lot of contraptions and whatnot. And I think that was a little bit affected by my bias. I mean, we generally think of dwarves or gnomes in that way. But really in this world, as my inspiration dictated, as I envisioned these elves, they were the ones who were very scientific and inventive. They were the ones who had the, if you remember as we went through the lore book, the grantors came to them in antiquity and granted to them technological advances that were far ahead of what was available at the time. So they're the ones who really should be, having these contraptions, inventions, and things like that. The dwarves of Osialux are a little bit more focused on alchemy and magic. And so the Power Gauntlet, although available to everyone, I wanted to note here that it was developed at Dawn's Crest. Okay, so again, lending, something to that lore. Alright, now the Vertigo Dart, previously, I believe, was part of the Elf faction group, but we moved it here as previously described because I had to shuffle some things around, and so those things that kind of seemed a little bit more general wound up in the faction cards. A weapon attachment, you need someone to shoot this thing. Choose an opposing unit or captain to have its defense reduced by 2 this phase. Alright, so we added in this phase to make sure that nobody thinks this is like some ongoing thing that is, you know, a captain's defense has been reduced by 2 and now we have to keep track of it from turn to turn or something like that. We're just real simple. This phase, the action phase, when you play this card, that's when this happens. At the end of the phase, this effect is over. The mind of a target struck by this dart is plunged into a state of bewildering disorientation. And we spoke about this last time. It weakens them so you can capture them more easily. The defense is reduced. Alright, so that's all for the equipment on these faction cards. Now we're moving into the tactics. These are the tactics of the faction. And you're going to see there's a little bit of similarity between the faction cards in both factions. You see before we had the Forge of Prophecy. The Forge of Vortices is going to be available to the Orcs. Here you have, where are we? No, we're over here. Cooperation is a tactic of the Champions, and it says, first of all, you may discard this card from your hand to draw a card. But if 2 or more units of different classes are played this phase, choose 2 of those units to gain +1 Calm and +1 Cunning. So it's 2 or more units of different classes. The classes being Elf, Dwarf, Man, okay, and that's going to be described in the rulebook of what a class is. So, you know, a Beast is a class, a Monstrosity is a class of unit. Alright, so if you have 2 different classes, be it a Witwolf and a Man, or an Elf and a Dwarf, then you're going to choose 2 of those who are different to gain +1 Calm and +1 Cunning. So it's going to be limited to 2. But they're going to gain +1 to both of their values, and then of course you could choose which one you want to use. All right, so that's the cooperation of the Champions faction. All right, when we go into the Orcs, we're going to see Cohesion again 4, so it's mirrored. You may discard this card from your hand to draw a card. Same ability as we saw in Cooperation, but in addition, if 2 or more units of the same group played this phase, choose 2 of those units to gain +1 Calm and +1 Cunning. So of the same group, meaning 2 Concord Orcs or 2 Xanth Orcs. Alright, so Cohesion. So you see how they mirror each other a little bit. The cooperation of the Men, Elves, and Dwarves, but that kind of, you know, the Orcs are unified on the face of it, but ultimately there are big differences between those clans that are, you know, some of them are a little insurmountable. You know, they do tend to clash with each other a little bit. And actually, in one of the games that takes place after this in the timeline, you're going to have the clash of the Orc Lords, whereby the Orcs are vying for control of the area and battling between each other. And the whole game is just Orcs battling each other, basically. There are some, you know, champion faction units that come into it, but they're played automatically by the game, and there's something that the Orcs have to kind of deal with in that game. It's pretty much Orc on Orc. And so that cohesion of the particular clan versus the cooperation of the Men, Elves, and Dwarves. So that's one of those cards that mirrors each other, just like the Forge. Okay, if there remains any hope of victory, it lies in the combined courage of Men, Elves, and Dwarves. That's by Marshall Adam. Marshall Adam being like the premier military leader of the Champions faction. Okay, and now this is going to let you discard this to draw a card, if you just want to do that. Because you look in your hand, if you don't have 2 or more units of different classes, this thing would be a dud. So you can discard it to draw a card. You're not going to wind up with a dead card here. No, we don't have an image description for this. I don't really want to think about it right now. We'll have to get that going at some point. The original alpha prototype isn't going to have any imagery on it. In fact, some of this text too, the flavor text and stuff, probably isn't going to be on those cards. You know, it's just to play it and see how it's going to go. We have a lot of time to think about what images are going to look like, particularly because I'm going to draw all the images for these cards. And we said there's, what, 170 unique cards, I believe? And so I have a lot of art to do. There's going to be plenty of time to figure that out. Alright, so now the second tactic is Expedited Supply. Okay, it's a very cheap card, 1 Cunning. You may destroy this card to discard the top 3 cards of your deck. Place any equipment cards discarded into your hand. So it's going to be destroyed, and that's why it has such a cheap cost. Okay, and it's going to allow you to look at your own deck, the top 3 cards, and get any equipment, you know, which would normally come out on the next turn. You'll be able to get it now. Caravans here, let's lend a hand with those crates. I'd rather not find ourselves beating back orcs with spoons. That's from Constable Crow. Okay, he's one of the captains of the Men faction. VP0, it's one of these 1-cost cards that are going to be destroyed, similar to the Smelling Salts, and so there's no victory points for this. You're meant to use it. Okay. Alright, and lastly we have the High Ground, which again, High Ground we discussed is similar to Hill Spot in that it allows you to look at something, reveal the top card of the opponent's faction deck. If it's a location or captain, draw 2 cards. Otherwise, you may destroy it to gain 1 influence. So we said how when you have locations or captains being revealed from the faction deck, we have to make sure they go back on top. We need those to come out. We don't want anything happening with those. We can't destroy them. We can't move them around. We want them to come out when they're supposed to. So if that happens, you're going to draw 2 cards and then put this back. Okay? So you're just going to get 2 cards extra that turn as the advantage for being on the high ground. But otherwise, you may destroy it to gain 1 influence. So having the high ground allows you to see something, and then of course you can act upon it. So if it's an equipment or a unit, you can get the jump on it, destroy it, and you're going to gain 1 influence if you do. So not only do you destroy one of their cards, but you're going to gain an influence token. So you see how it's pretty rare that something allows you to gain an influence. We said that when you capture a notorious unit, you're going to gain an influence, and here this is going to allow you to pick up an influence, but we haven't seen a lot of cards that let you do that because we don't want there to be a glut of influence tokens. They're too dangerous, they're too powerful. Okay, we've got them where we want them. So what's it going to be, Marshall? Kill or capture? That's Bertram Moore. The implication is that he's speaking to Marshall Adam. Okay, so you see something and then you get to decide what to do with it. Now remember, you may destroy it. You don't have to destroy it. You can put that unit back on the top of the deck. It will come out into the active field, and then you would have the opportunity to capture it. So that's why we're talking about kill or capture. Destroy it or leave it out and then capture it. If it's, let's say, a 2 VP card, maybe one of their notorious units, and you see that their deck has been running a little low on cunning, you don't think they're going to be able to snag that unit on the first turn it comes out, but you think you'll be able to capture it, you may want to put that notorious unit back on top of the deck, let it come out, and capture it on a future turn to get that 2 VP, in addition to the influence token from capturing a notorious unit. You see, so kill or capture is a very real decision in this high ground if it reveals a unit. Okay, and now we are into the units. These are again faction units that are available to men, elves, or dwarves. We have Artemis Harrow, who we previously discussed as the author of Dawn of Thunder, traveling writer and scholar. Harrow's accounts are widely regarded as both fascinating and reliable. And he has become a notorious unit. So you're going to get that 1 influence. There's only 1 copy of him. And he has the assault ability, discard this card, then place the top card of your basic unit pile into your hand. So this hasn't changed since we looked at it in the previous videos. Bandits of Doonesboro, we also looked at last time. They have the ability to fortify. Now Artemis Harrow doesn't have the ability to fortify, but he has the assault ability. So he would have to kind of show up in your hand when you were resolving an assault, or you would have to put him in your reserves if you wanted to guarantee that he'd come out during an attacking assault to use this ability. But you are going to have cards that just show up in your hand that turn when your assault resolves. And so if he was there, you'd be lucky and you'd get this assault. Otherwise, you can kind of bank him for later and gain access to this. What it would do, in effect, is it would guarantee that you got an extra unit. Because remember, in your hand, you might have all equipment and tactics. You know, and if that happened on the turn that an assault was resolving, you'd be in trouble because you only need units for an assault. All right, so that adds that randomness in a little bit. You can plan by putting cards in your reserves, but you don't know what you're going to get in your hand, and that kind of reflects how when you make an assault, you make plans, but you know the best laid plans, right? Often go awry. So you don't know what's going to happen, what you're going to draw that turn. You do your best to kind of do something about it by maybe banking a card like Artemis Harrow, who he's going to go, but he's going to make sure you get a useful unit into your hand. Because a basic unit is going to have something you can use. It's going to have some calm or some cunning, and you know the 3 basic units that your faction group has. So, you know, you'll be aware of what those cards are. And if you like your odds on that, you can use him to make sure you have at least this unit in your hand at the time of an assault resolving. And so yeah, the Bandits of Doonesboro, we spoke about them. Now we changed attack to strike. And the reason why is because when we talk about assaults, we talk about an attacker and a defender. And so we want that terminology to be reserved for assaults. And a strike also, attacking is like very general, you know, you're attacking in all sorts of regards. But a strike is like a very direct, focused attack, right? I mean, just in terms of the connotation of the word, not literally per se, but, you know, it has the connotation of being a little bit more targeted. And since these strike cards are being played as a direct attack against your opponent, I thought the word strike was, you know, served two purposes, was more useful in both regards. Also, now this card doesn't have an ability, it only has the strike ability, it doesn't have an additional ability, but I've decided that strike previously was something that you can use the ability on a card and then you can do its strike at any time during your turn when you play them. Now strikes are an either-or proposition. If a card has an ability and a strike ability, you know, regular ability and a strike ability, you have to choose what you want to do. A strike requires you to discard the card. The same way an evade card causes you or requires you to discard the card. So if I make a strike, I don't get to use the ability, I don't get to have access to his combat or cunning. See, previously I could put him down, get 2 cunning, then I could do his ability, and then I could also do the strike. It's too much in one card. This puts another point of choice. Do I need this cunning, or do I want to do this strike? You see, if he had another ability, do I want that ability, or do I want to do this strike? Now each strike is still going to have one of the 3 types. Sabotage, destruction, or attrition. And so this one is a sabotage strike. Choose an opponent to reveal their hand. They discard 1 equipment of your choice. Alright, so you're taking a chance with this. They may not have an equipment in their hand. So, you know, you may want to, on a previous turn, kind of scry the top card of their deck if you have something that allows you to do that. Make sure they have an equipment, or just take a chance. If you don't need the combat and cunning this turn, then take a chance on it. We also changed how evades work. Evades no longer have to line up, and we'll see that as we go along. Do we have an evade? We don't have an evade coming up right now. We'll take a look at it when it comes up. But evades are all evades are going to be able to evade all strikes. It's not where you have to line them up anymore. What's going to line up is going to be an effect that happens. So if you evade a sabotage strike with a sabotage evade, you're going to get an ability like this. You're going to get some kind of an effect that happens by lining them up. But if it doesn't line up, you still evade the strike, and the strike is canceled. Okay, because again, I thought that lining up was going to be a little cumbersome. You're going to have a lot of turns where you have two evade cards in your hand. Neither one of them line up, and the way we had it previously was that they wouldn't work if they didn't line up. So it's like, oh man, I got 2 evade cards and I can't evade this strike. I mean, come on, you know, it would be frustrating. Why put that point of frustration there? You know, let's let these cards do what they, you know, are thematically designed to do. You know, if it's an evade card, you want to be able to evade with it. And we're also going to make them very obvious. Strike abilities are going to have like a red stripe, and evade abilities are going to have a blue stripe. You're going to be able to look in your hand and see if you have any blue. When this strike comes up, you look in your hand. If you got a blue stripe, you could do something. If you don't, you can't. No reading, no nothing. You're going to know right away, and then you could go on and read to see if they match up. Sabotage to sabotage, attrition to attrition, whatever. Okay. Scavenging and thievery are common means of survival for the forlorn dwellers of Doonesboro. All right, and we've spoken about these bandits previously. All right, and then the Defiant Civilian, which we've also spoken about in the previous videos. You may attach this card to any unit or equipment in your faction's row of the active field. When an opponent would purchase the attached card, destroy this card instead. Multiple Defiant Civilian cards may be attached to the same card, because you see there's 4 of these. You know, there's a lot of civilians, obviously, in the land during all of this struggle and strife on the part of the Champions faction, because this is their land. They're just like regular people living there. You know, the Orcs are bringing warriors, you know, but the men and elves and dwarves, they're just there, you know. So the Defiant Civilian, it's, again, Canton Fields is mostly men, so it's a men card. But we did have to change it a little bit. because we didn't want to make it, again, we don't want to have this effect is supposed to happen when an opponent tries to capture or destroy a card. It's something that's happening on the opponent's turn. We don't want any cards to be useful on an opponent's turn unless very obviously delineated, as we described with the evade cards. There's a blue stripe. I can do something. So if there's a blue stripe, I could do something on your turn. If there's not a blue stripe in my hand, I can't do anything on your turn. I don't have to read anything. I can tell immediately just by looking at my hand. This ability, where we said, you know, when an opponent tries to capture a unit, you can discard this card. And it wasn't an evade because it didn't evade a strike, but it was something you would do on an opponent's turn. And so it kind of just was in this middle ground that was very uncomfortable. Now we made it so you can attach this card to a unit or equipment in your faction's row of the active field. So you're just going to slip this behind one of the cards in the active field, and it's going to protect that card. If they try and do something to it, you're going to destroy this card instead. And this card only costs 2. You could defend the Mantle of Majesty with this card, you see, which costs 9. You may not be able to purchase that card now, so you want to protect it. For 2, you can protect it, you see, at least for one shot. They're going to try their hand at it, and they're going to clip the Defiant Civilian instead of get the card they're really after. And now the Defiant Civilian has a defense of 2, but the way this is written, they wouldn't be able to pay 2 to get rid of it. It's when an opponent would purchase the attached card. So they would have to pay whatever the attached card was worth to destroy this, you see? So it would really protect that card. And we'll see how that plays out. If I don't like that, I'll change it to where they'll just pay the defense, and then it would reduce the combat they have in their hand by 2, and then maybe they wouldn't have enough to continue to do what they want. The way it is now, it would be very hard for them to do this in one turn, to get rid of this. I mean, if they're after like a piece of equipment that's 6, they'd have to have 6 to get rid of this, and then another 6 to actually get it. So that may be prohibitive, but that's okay. I mean, it's like that Defiant Civilian is in their way, and they have to get rid of it this turn and then come back again next turn, and that's kind of tense because now they're leaving it open that they may not be able to get it because they have to wait a whole nother turn, and by then you may purchase it. So maybe that tension is a good thing. Right now I feel like it is, so we'll see where that falls out, but multiple Defiant Civilian cards may be attached to the same card, so you can put a couple of these on something like the Mantle of Majesty and protect it deep into the game, because they'd have to pay 9 to get this off and 9 to get another one off before they could even pay the 9 to get it. So we'll see. Right now I like it the way it is, but that's one of those things we'll be keeping an eye on as we go forward. And the Powderwood Trail Hunter, which again we spoke about last time, we had to reword some of this, and I think I still want to reword it a little, and I'll tell you why after we read it. You remember the Powderwood Trail Hunter? He goes into the opponent's deck and he hunts down a unit. If you're playing for the Champions faction, you may place this card into an opponent's discard pile. That's the ability, alright? You don't need any of the rest of this. That's the ability for this guy. Now, if you want to understand why you would do this, then you'd continue reading. If you are not playing for the Champions faction, you must play this card at the beginning of your action phase before any attrition cards. Alright, so if this went into your deck via this ability, it goes into your discard pile, then you shuffle it into your deck, you wind up with it in your hand. If this is in your hand and you're an opponent, you have to play this before attrition cards, which means you can't you can't target this card with the attrition card. The attrition card makes you discard a card. You can't discard this card. This is going to come into play before that. Alright, and what it does is it destroys one other unit in your hand. Then place this card in the Champions row of the active field. If you did not destroy a unit, shuffle this card into your deck. Okay? So, if you're playing for the Champions faction, you're going to put this in an opponent's discard pile. If they can't destroy it while it's in their discard pile, it's going to get reshuffled into their deck. They're going to eventually draw it into their hand. When it comes out in their hand, they're going to have to play it. It's going to destroy another unit in their hand. And then it's going to return to the active field. If it doesn't catch a unit, it's going to keep searching. It's going to go back into the deck. It's not even going into the discard pile this time. It's getting shuffled directly back into the deck. It's going to keep pressing to try and find a unit, okay? The Trail Hunter. I had to reword some of this because the way it was written, if I'm playing a card from my hand, then it's assumed it's doing what it says here, you see? And so, like, if this just says, just forget all of this, and it just says, you may place this card into an opponent's discard pile, which is what it said previously, that's only speaking to a Champions player. Now, if I have this in my card, if in my hand as an opponent, and I play it, then it would still do this, presumably. Which means then I'd be able to put it in your discard pile, which would be stupid. We would just be putting it on each other's discard pile, but never be attacking any units. And plus, I can't do that. It's my enemy. I can't make it do something, you see. So I had to get very specific about how this was worded. And right now it's working. The only reason why I don't like it is because it says for the Champions faction, and I'm thinking long term. And in the Great Mage War, the Champions isn't going to be one of the factions. It's going to be the Northern Mage Academies versus the Southern Guild Mages. Those are going to be the factions in that war. So then you would not be able to use this card in that game. And it would be like the only card you couldn't use in that game. And I want to keep everything open because I have plans for how these cards are going to assimilate into the next edition of the game. And so I kind of want to allow these things to do that. Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to think about it more because faction cards may not be usable in that game because you're not playing this faction, you see? So maybe all the faction cards won't be usable, but you'll be able to use group cards in combination with the faction cards from that game. Because we are going to allow you to use these group cards. And the way I have it worked out is that... and this is how the history goes. The Dwarves of Versailles Lux are going to the Champions faction is going to be split because this is a civil war. The Northern Mages versus the Southern Mages is a civil war. So this Champions faction is going to be split. After the Orcs win this battle for Canton Fields, all of this Champions faction is going to get pushed into Dawn, and they're going to take sides. The men are going to side with the Northern Mages. The elves are going to side with the... No, wait a minute. I think I said the dwarves are going to side with the Northern Mages. The elves are going to side with the Southern Mages. And the men were going to be split. And I have a mechanism for splitting them. There's going to be bonus cards added. And you're going to have certain captains from this faction are going to be usable for the Northern Mages. Certain ones are going to be used for the Southern Mages. Then we're going to fill in any gaps with some bonus cards. So I know that's all irrelevant right now, but that's why I'm thinking of that as I write this stuff. Okay. Alright, so that is all for the faction cards. Now we're getting into the group cards, the Canton Fields Brigade, which is the men's faction if you recall. And we'll be taking a closer look at them next time. I think we've gone far enough for today. So, again, thanks for checking in. We're getting along with this stuff pretty well. You're getting a nice overview of everything. And when we're done with all of this, we're going to go make this prototype and play it, and we'll see how all of this plays out. Okay, I'll see you next time.